Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Welcome. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Many in Florida are ordered to leave as Hurricane Milton bears down on the western part of the state. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is inviting more premiers across the country to join in New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs' carbon tax fight. And a number of Lethbridge hurricanes joined forces at the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen to help some of our cities most vulnerable.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. As Hurricane Milton churns toward the west coast of Florida, the state's governor says Florida is prepared. Ron DeSantis also reminded residents in the path of the hurricane that there's still time to leave.
Hurricane Milton is heading our way. It will arrive either late tonight or early tomorrow morning. So now we're bearing down to where the storm is going to arrive within the next 24 hours. You still have time to evacuate if you are in an evacuation zone, particularly if you're in Manatee, Sarasota, Charlotte, those areas. I mean, this track can bounce around. It's not guaranteed it's going to hit there. A lot of the solutions have it going there. You have time to do that. Now, conditions aren't going to be great today. I would say that the roads and the interstates, they are flowing. We've waived tolls. We've done all that so people can do. But the best option would probably be just to evacuate within your own county to one of the shelters.
U.S. federal emergency officials, meanwhile, have a very strong message to Floridians that Hurricane Milton is going to be both a deadly and a catastrophic storm.
It will bring massive storm surge, high winds, and severe flooding as it moves across the state of Florida. I will be traveling back to Florida today so I can be side by side with the governor and his team to ensure seamless support for the state. And I will remain there for the coming days to assess the impacts and prioritize the federal resources that will be moving into the area. This is going to be a difficult day. We are already seeing the impacts of this storm. The most important thing is your safety. And I need you to do everything you can to stay safe as Milton makes landfall. Some of you might still be able to evacuate safely. For others, it may be too late. But please continue to listen to your local officials for further direction on what you need to do to be safe where you are right now.
You know, during hurricane season, it's not just the locals in the areas where the hurricane hits who are impacted. Travelers also suffer from these natural disasters. Inspired Vacations owner Tracy Hamilton in Lethbridge explains what passengers should do when they have a holiday booked and a hurricane hits.
Currently, there's a lot of advisories, and then flights have actually been canceled. So people who have been impacted will need to call whoever they booked it with, and then they'll help them through that rebooking process or cancellation process. For those people who are looking right now, they can check what their terms and conditions are of the tickets that they purchased. You know, if they booked with an advisor, they would be best to reach out to them or directly to the airlines or the resorts that they're staying at. And hurricanes come and go really fast, so they'll just have to watch the dates and what's happening with it. But typically anywhere from August to the end of October. So we always mention that to our clients when they're looking at those beach destinations at this time of year. Always, when you're looking at traveling in general, insurance is always important. There are specific types of hurricane and storm protection that you can get to.
Officially, the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season began on June the 1st. Well, it was another warm but windy day here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, I heard that we may see 28 or even 29 degrees next week for Thanksgiving Monday.
Well, you have heard correctly, Hal. Looking forward to that extended holiday weekend coming up. And so, you know, if you love warm weather and turkey dinners, this could be your weekend coming up. I know, I'm excited about it. As for daytime highs, 25 was our daytime high today. Didn't quite reach that. It was a very slow burn today, so much of the day felt rather chilly, and we're going to feel quite a bit similar to that tomorrow with only a daytime high of 15. But we shouldn't complain because 15 is the actual seasonal high for this time of year. So we're still doing all right. I'll take it. And I will be back later in the show to take a look at what the national forecast is looking like.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says Canada's position has always been to bring peace and stability to the Middle East. She made the remarks in the wake of the Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah firing hundreds of rockets into Israel as the Israel Defense Forces ramp up its airstrikes in Lebanon and pushes ahead with a ground incursion. Joly says her government is putting more pressure on all parties in the Middle East to work towards a ceasefire.
I was talking with American colleagues again yesterday to make sure that we put pressure on the Israeli government, and at the same time that we're able to put pressure on all parties, and Iran, who's a terrorist regime with all its terrorist proxies, which are Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, to make sure that we put pressure on them too. So diplomacy is still happening.
Minister Joly adds that more than 100 Canadians have left Lebanon on Wednesday on a flight from Beirut to Istanbul. She says the Canadian government is also supporting the departure of 15 British citizens from Lebanon. A Conservative MP from Nova Scotia says the Liberal cover-ups on Parliament Hill have to come to an end. Rick Perkins says the Trudeau government must come clean and give the RCMP the documents it needs to investigate the Liberals' quote, green slush fund.
There is so much Liberal corruption that they're covering up their cover-up of the $400 million corruption of the Liberal Green Slush Fund. The Speaker ruled that the NDP Liberals violated a House order to turn the Green Slush Fund documents over to the RCMP for investigation. How much worse is the corruption that the NDP Liberals are refusing to respect the order of the Speaker, pushing aside all the work of doubling the housing costs that the Liberals have done, inflation and crime? We can get back to the business at this House if the NDP Liberals just end the cover-up and turn the documents over to the RCMP. Why won't they?
You ruled very clearly that this matter should go to the House committee. If the members opposite would like to read your full ruling, they can go do that, or I can table it in the House for them to read. But I would encourage them to not just cherry-pick parts of your ruling, but to actually follow it as opposed to what they're doing. We're happy for this matter to move on, for it to go to committee, for it to be studied.
A recent Leger poll says 70% of Canadians support removing the carbon tax from all home heating fuels. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling on premiers in our country to join in a carbon tax fight. Chris Sims is the Alberta director of the CTF, and she's calling on all premiers, including Alberta's Daniel Smith, to join New Brunswick's Blaine Higgs in this legal challenge if he's re-elected.
So New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs is actually leading the fight this time around against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's carbon tax in court. Now, folks might remember, didn't we lose that at the Supreme Court last time? Yes, but the reason why we lost it on the carbon tax at the Supreme Court is because the Supreme Court accepted the argument that this was a national thing, and it was the only way to fight climate change. Things have changed since then. People might remember the Trudeau government gave a big carve out on home furnace heating fuel, home furnace oil on the carbon tax, meaning primarily people in Atlantic Canada, mostly in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, they're not paying a carbon tax on their furnace oil anymore, which completely defeats the argument, we would say, that this is now national in scope. So that is why we are now urging premiers like Premier Daniel Smith and all premiers across Canada to jump over the top rope on this one.
Sims adds that if Ottawa removed the carbon tax from our natural gas bills here in Alberta, the average Albertan would save more than $430 this winter alone. You know, when you go online, your personal privacy always seems to be put at risk. What's the Canadian government really doing about it? Sharon Polsky, president of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, says the only way to make effective legislation to protect online privacy is not to listen to the tech companies who may have some ulterior motives.
The only way things will change is when there are laws in place that, yes, the lawmakers consult the tech companies for the technical information, but do not accept the input or the draft legislation provided by many of the companies, because that's exactly what's happening now, is the tech companies are saying, here you go, lawmaker, here's how the law really, we understand the technology, we built it, we know what it's about, this is what the law needs to say. And they pass those laws, and they are privacy laws in name only.
Make sure you catch more of this insightful interview with Sharon Polsky, President of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. The Alberta government announced that a new tentative 4-year compensation agreement has been reached with resident physicians. Officials say the new deal provides wage increases of 3% in each of the first 2 years and 2% in each of the last 2 years. It will also include market adjustments that will put our province on par with other Western Canadian medical schools. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange says this new deal will help to address Alberta's health workforce challenges.
Resident physicians are truly critical to the healthcare system, representing the future of medicine in our province. Resident physicians are those who have graduated medical school but are completing postgraduate training in a residency program to obtain their license to practice. And as they complete their training, they are most often involved in a patient's first medical contact in teaching hospitals and clinics throughout the province.
Now, in response, Sarah Hoffman, the Alberta NDP health critic, released a statement which in part said, unless this UCP government stops stalling and signs the agreement they've already reached with physicians, many will go to other provinces as soon as they complete their residency. The Friends of Medicare say 2 doctors will be leaving the Campbell Clinic here in Lethbridge. One physician pointed her finger at the Alberta government for her decision to leave. Dr. Jessica Vandersloot and Dr. Jared Stephenson will be leaving at the end of December. Now, Dr. Vandersloot, in a letter to her patients, had this to say: there have been many promises made to help shore up the desperate situation in family medicine, but no meaningful change. The funding model for family docs, which is similar to that being used in British Columbia, was pitched to the government more than a year ago. We were assured that it would be in place by the fall, and now it's unclear if it will happen at all. This is just one of many frustrations and delays that have made it increasingly challenging to work in the system. The province announced that more than $820 million in infrastructure funding will be going to Lethbridge and other Alberta municipalities during the 2025-2026 period. Now, that represents an increase of around 13% compared to the 2024 budget. This amount is provided through the provincial funding formula and will allow the city to plan more effectively for the future. That means that when provincial revenues increase, municipal funding increases at the same percentage. Lethbridge city officials released a statement which in part read that the municipality is estimated to receive capital funding of $14.2 million in 2025. They say, however, in the future, starting in approximately 2027, the city's capital budget will encounter pressures for capital investment, therefore projects will need to be prioritized. The City of Lethbridge is repealing a couple of historical designations to former buildings. Now, one is the former Beau-en-Tong building, and the other is the Manny Opera Society. They were both severely damaged following a major fire in January of last year and were deemed unsafe and were subsequently demolished in May of this year. Officials say the demolitions resulted in the complete loss of heritage values and character, defining elements of both historic resources, so there was no benefit to leave the designations set in place. NEWSCAST say house prices in our province have simply gone through the roof. The Alberta Real Estate Association says the average cost to buy a home in our provinces is up 11.1% from the same period last year to nearly $495,000. In Lethbridge, the average price increased 12.6% since 2023. That is the second highest increase in Alberta, just behind Calgary. A real estate agent with Royal LePage in Lethbridge, Jeff Reimer, says while demand in Lethbridge continues to increase, the rate increase is rather surprising.
I guess it's a good problem if you're selling your house. If you're trying to buy, of course, it's a little more challenging, especially in the more affordable price points. It's you got to jump on them quick, and even sometimes then there's 2 or 3, 4 people that might want it. Condominiums are really a hot commodity right now on the south side of Lethbridge. Trying to find affordable condominiums is real tight. Lethbridge is growing, so even at whatever rate that is exactly, it's growth, and we got to put those people in homes. And the interest rates are behaving themselves, and we've seen some more recent lowering actually, and so that's keeping things moving. So we've got the first-time home buyers are pushing up on those lower price points, and medium price points. And that's, of course, putting upward pressure on every price point.
Now, the study, however, by the Alberta Real Estate Association also showed that semi-detached homes and apartment condo prices in Lethbridge remain on the lower side compared to other cities in Alberta. With the Lethbridge hurricane season a couple of weeks in, the players are taking some time out of their busy schedule to connect more with the local community. The Hurricanes stopped by the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen on Tuesday to prepare some hot meals for some of our most vulnerable. BCN's Landon Hickok connected with the team at the Soup Kitchen and has more.
With 5 games into the 2024-25 regular season, the Lethbridge Hurricanes are temporarily switching to different kinds of blades, sharpening their knives before their skates. The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen, which has been around for nearly 4 decades, has relied on the backs and generosity of its volunteers. The Canes have been long-standing partners with the kitchen, occasionally sending select players and personnel at a time to help prep and serve food to patrons. The Hurricanes have been making a trio of visits recently to the kitchen to assist in giving back to the community.
I think it's great for us, kind of coming in here, preparing the meals, seeing the less fortunate people, and obviously kind of getting that feeling of how fortunate we are to be where we are in life. And I think it's honestly a big step for us, and I think it gives us a better point of view of life too.
The Hurricanes have often been synonymous with community efforts. Just on Wednesday, multiple Canes players announced they will donate $10 on each point that they score throughout the regular season to the Alberta Children's Hospital or Special Olympics Lethbridge. Players on the team say off the ice, the team remains committed to each other and the community that they represent.
I think it's a great thing to do. It goes a long way. Helping these people out honestly is huge. It's huge for our community. What they do here is awesome. Like they help a lot, and yeah, it goes a long way for these people.
Our guests love it when people come, especially wearing the uniform, the sweater. It makes them feel as though they're important and that the players are taking time out of their busy schedules and coming to serve them. And I think for the players too, I also go out to their dressing room once a year, share a little bit about what we do about poverty, addiction, and homelessness. And I think a lot of players maybe don't have exposure. I think anytime we become aware of needs around us, it impacts us. It does, because we can become very much like we're in our own little world. We don't know what's going on around. We have blinders on. I think creating awareness is probably the biggest thing that we can do, and this is a small step in that direction.
Best cook here tonight? Leo Briard.
Any reason, or you just know he's a good cook?
Just good in the kitchen, I guess.
I'll give it to him because he's French. Yeah.
For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Great to see the kids, the Hurricanes, giving back. Nice. With today's high cost of living, having to buy multiple pairs of shoes for growing children can sometimes wear on parents' nerves and their wallets. Emily Soper, certified podorthist, offers some advice in choosing the right footwear for your kids.
It's hard for parents to keep up with how fast the kids grow, and kids sometimes don't always tell you, and it's hard to buy a shoe beginning of the year and then have to replace it again in December. So especially with today's costs, I do see it more often than not, but again, there's a hereditary factor in some cases where the second toe is longer, and then in that case, over time, it definitely claws back. You always want to make sure that you're getting a thumb space from the end of their longest toe to the end of the shoe when buying shoes at the store.
Learn more about good shoes and good foot health from Emily Soper, owner of Nexus Orthotics and Medicine Hat, in my full interview with her coming up later in our program. Well, we had some sunshine mixed with clouds and very warm again today here in Lethbridge, and things will be cooling off a bit before warming up once again. A full look at the weather pictures coming up. Here we are in the first week of October, enjoying the very warm weather across much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it appears as though the mercury may dip over the next couple of days before rebounding in time for a beautiful Thanksgiving long weekend.
Yeah, well, it is supposed to dip just a teeny tiny bit, getting down to the teens there before climbing back up to the 20s. Still not that terrible considering we're still in those averages, the seasonal averages for this time of year. So 15 tomorrow on Thursday, 19 on Friday, and then climbing as we get through the weekend. They're up to 20 on Saturday, 23 Sunday, holiday Monday, which will be 29 degrees on Thanksgiving, and then back to 28 on Tuesday. So summer doesn't want to go anywhere, and I'm totally fine with that. So average high for this time of year, 16, average low 2 degrees, 28 was our high temperature, happening 1 year ago today. That was 2023. That was our record high on this day. And then the record low happened back in 1932. It was minus 18. 7:44 is when the sun rose this morning. Sunset tonight at 6:51. So we're now seeing 11 hours, 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 11 hours, 6 minutes of daylight. So just a few minutes shorter of a day than we saw yesterday. 16 for the high tomorrow in Victoria, seeing some early morning showers and then clearing skies in the morning as well in Vancouver. High of 15 degrees, 12 in Edmonton, 13 in Calgary, under clear sunny skies for both of those Alberta cities. As we look into the rest of the prairies, here is Saskatoon, looking at a high of 15 degrees. We've got clearing skies early in the morning. We've got a mix of sun and cloud in Regina, 17 degrees for the high, up to 60 wind gusts expected also in Regina. And in Winnipeg, we've got some increasing clouds happening there with a high of 22 degrees. As we get into the central part of the country, we've got cloudy skies expected in Toronto, high of 15 degrees. We've got increasing clouds in Ottawa, 13, and partly cloudy skies as well in Montreal tomorrow with a high of 14 degrees. As we look to the Maritimes here, we're seeing lots of rainfall. So we've got 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected in Fredericton, 14. Same thing in Halifax, 14. Looking at showers expected tomorrow in Charlottetown, high of 11 degrees, and 14 for the high in St. John's, also expecting some showers there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
A new report says condo inventory is on the rise in most major Canadian markets as more sellers list their properties in hopes of growing demand from buyers. RE/MAX Canada's report found British Columbia's Fraser Valley led year-over-year inventory growth in the first 8 months of this year at 58.7%. It was closely followed by the Greater Toronto Area and then Calgary. The GTA was the only region where average condo prices declined year-over-year, while Calgary led the way for average price growth of 15%. A breakdown in talks with striking workers has prompted Boeing to withdraw its latest contract offer. The company says the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers did not seriously consider its proposals. The union complained last month that Boeing had publicized its latest offer to 33,000 striking workers without first bargaining with union negotiators. The offer would have given workers 30% raises over 4 years, while the union originally demanded 40% over 3 years. The strike has shut down production of most aircraft, including 737 and 767s. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 152 points on the day to finish at 24,224. The Dow was up 431 points to 42,512. The S&P 500 was up 40 to 5792, and the NASDAQ was up 108 points to finish at 18,291. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 21 cents to 73.36 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 9 cents to $2.64 U.S. Gold was down $12.42 to $26.0771 U.S. an ounce, and silver was down 17 cents to $30.50 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.03 per bushel, barley is at $6.10, canola is at $13.95, and corn is at $7.49 per bushel. Live cattle were down 28 cents to $188.20. Feeder cattle were down $1.05 to $249.28. Lean hogs were up 90 cents to $87.33, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.30 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Floridians are preparing for the worst as Hurricane Milton bears down on the west coast of the state. Over 7 million people have been ordered to evacuate as emergency officials say this could be one of the worst storms to hit Florida in over 100 years. Milton has now been downgraded to a Category 3 hurricane. Protecting your online privacy is very important to protect your identity and your family. Coming up, BCN's Jeanette Roche will chat with the president of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, Sharon Polsky, about steps you can take to protect yourself online. When you see news happening in your community, please send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews.
Personal privacy has never been so much at risk as it is today, especially with the increasing use of social media. Of course, there's even more concern when children are being targeted. So joining us today is Sharon Polsky. She is the president of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada. Good to have you with us today, Sharon, who is actually joining us from a cruise ship. Lucky you.
Lovely to be with you again.
I would really appreciate taking the time out of your vacation to talk about this. So Sharon, recently Instagram introduced some new rules for minors, and some say that it's great, while others believe that it's not nearly enough. And I understand that teens will now by default get a private account when they sign up. So that sounds like a good thing, doesn't it, Sharon?
Well, if all you do is look at the surface and the marketing information and the promotional and the PR information, yeah, it sounds terrific. Just like the laws that are coming in saying everybody's going to have to be age gated if they to protect them from seeing online what they're not allowed to see in real life, pornography, basically. Problem is, it's not that simple because now, and the companies acknowledge that teens will lie about their age. So if a teen puts on an age that makes them look like an adult, they'll have to verify their age. Well, if I open up an account, I might be lying. I might be a teen lying, which means I too, everybody will have to provide information to prove their age. And then we get to the point of how kids can alter, if you're 16 or 17, you can change the settings with your parents' permission, which means if my 16 or 17-year-old wants to change the settings, they have to ask my permission. I have to have an account. So what's going to end up happening is they're going to get an awful lot more accounts. And that's good for business.
Well, there you go, right? Okay, so let's get back to the verifying the age. So how does Instagram actually go about verifying the age and identity of a minor?
There's an entire industry that has been built up around age verification, age assurance. They call it different things. And basically, it's artificial intelligence that estimates your age and then goes out, as their terms of service say they might, and they will. They'll go out and check you out on other platforms, the things you say, the photos that your friends, strangers post. If it's a school photo from an outing, there you are in a junior school. Well, you can't possibly be over 18. Problem comes in, not everybody fits the standard mold. I had a wonderful conversation with a young woman in Toronto a few months ago. Her income is based on her Instagram account and the content in that, except one day she was notified that her account was canceled because the algorithm determined, that she can't possibly be over 18. In fact, she's 22 years old. And she's short in stature.
Like
she has a young-looking face. Yeah, okay. Little person. And her arms are shorter. Her body is shorter. The proportions are not those of a typical adult. So the algorithms don't always get it right. And this is a perfect case.
Interesting. Okay, so it's not like they have to submit some sort of ID or anything that's they're literally they're trying to find other pictures of you just to verify this?
Other pictures, other things you've said. There's certain speech patterns that kids will use that adults typically won't. Things like that. Gosh. And if you look at the terms of service, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or any of them, they all have essentially the same thing. It is a one-way bargain. Okay. So if you want to use it, you have no choice but to accept their terms.
Oh boy. Should we be trusting Instagram with the identity data of our kids?
Well, should we be trusting any company, or for that matter, should we be trusting any of our governments these days, who often rely on the companies as well, third parties, who sometimes often rely on other third-party companies? You don't even know who gets your information. And when we see so many breaches and people dipping into, out of curiosity and human nature, to look at things that they have no business looking at, but we have no choice but to trust when our government says we only accept information digitally. We are moving to digital for convenience. They never say whose convenience, yours and mine or theirs. What choice do we have? We do have choices.
Oh boy. Okay, so those under 16 will now need parental permission to change protective settings. So how easy is it for a teen to maybe circumvent these requirements if their parents say don't go along with it, or if they don't have Instagram like you were mentioning earlier?
Well, it's really not too hard to go online and educate yourself about some of the tips and tricks to circumvent whatever the age gating is. There's always somebody else's ID. It's not that hard. And, you know, it's years ago when biometric security systems were coming in, except it's very simple. At least in Canada, employers have an obligation to accommodate people if they have physical disabilities. You can't not employ someone because they don't have certain physical features, let's say. So what happens when the biometric system that allows you to get into your workplace is a fingerprint, except you're one of the rare people who has no fingerprint, or they've been burned off in an accident? The employer has an obligation to do a workaround so that you can enter your workplace. Every single system has a workaround, which means they're not secure. Kids are very inventive. We were all teenagers at one point, and many of us either did or know other people who were very, very creative in getting around the rules.
Oh yeah,
Today's
we thought we were
children
so smart.
are that's right. And we look back, maybe we weren't, but we also didn't have the internet with a world of information to help us. Today, kids do.
Yeah, and it's scary. And speaking of that, what is Instagram doing to protect the sextortion of minors? And Sharon, for our viewers who might not know, maybe explain what sextortion is, because it's becoming a growing concern.
It absolutely is. But keep in mind, the internet is a tool, and the same problems that exist now have pretty much always existed. Every technology introduces new, or at least magnifies the problem. Sextortion, sexting. Let's start with sexting. If you show me yours, I'll show you mine. Kids play doctor. Always have. When you get a camera, now you get a cell phone, a smartphone that has a camera. I'll show you my naughty bits. You'll show me yours. I've been online with a friend, because everybody is a friend, because go back to that Maslow hierarchy, we all want to be part of a group and accepted. So somebody gives us an invitation to link to them online. They're a new friend. We don't know the person. It might be a completely bogus photo and profile. They might have the language that sounds kind of like someone my age, a kid, and is actually a grown-up, someone who's a pedophile, a groomer, a predator.
For sure.
They earn your trust. They should ask for a picture, maybe in a bikini or without a top. And well, it's pretty innocent, and it's, just kids. So you send them something, and then they say, okay, well, I want more and I want more. You already trust them. You've already sent them. You send them a little more. And then they say, good, now I want these specific, very graphic photos, or else I'm going to put them online. I'm going to share them publicly. I'm going to put them on a porn site. I'm going to tell your family. I'm going to post it to you. Kids are mortified to the point, literally, some kids have taken their own lives out of fear of being outed for having done something. And that's sexting. It's extortion with a sexual connotation.
It's like extorting money also for these favors.
It is.
Or, if you don't pay me, I'm gonna show these images everywhere. And these poor kids are just, and there has been some suicides about it. So getting back to what is Instagram doing to protect this, or are they doing anything?
Well, they all, and I'm not talking about one platform or another in specific, but most of them say we have terms of service, we have community rules. If you breach them, our systems will find it, and you will be blocked. There will be severe consequences. But I look to Pornhub. They have tens of millions of users. Their terms of service also say only photos that are and videos that are posted with consent will be allowed. Anything that's underage, that's non-consensual, will be blocked, will be removed. The words sound good, but they've been taken to court by many young women who basically were drugged, raped. Their videos are online without their consent, and it literally took years for the images and the content to be removed, if at all. And in the meantime, it can be downloaded by other people and shared and proliferates around the internet. So what can companies do? Perhaps more, but then it might be bad for business. And that's really a horrible thing when they, and I've been doing risk assessments from a privacy perspective for organizations, private sector, government agencies for many, many years. And typically, the risk assessment is done from the perspective of the organization. Is it going to affect our bottom line, our public presence, our reputation in the community? They don't look at it the way they're supposed to, which is, does it pose a risk to the individual whose personal information we are capturing, using, holding, sharing?
Yeah, and there are dozens of states in the U.S. that are suing Facebook and Instagram for making social media addictive to kids. Now, is there any hope of making companies change this behavior?
When my kids were little, I used to say, don't spend so much time. These things are designed to make you want to scroll more. It's addictive. And they'd look at me and roll their eyes. And years later, guess what?
Yeah.
Turns out these sites are designed to be addictive. And several years ago, I did a very informal search and found more psychologists listed at a couple of these social media companies than design engineers. They have armies of psychiatrists and sociologists and people who are from the social sciences who help design those sites so that they are addictive because sticky eyeballs view more ads. The only way, and I've said this in parliamentary committees several times, the only way things will change is when there are laws in place that, yes, the lawmakers consult the tech companies for the technical information, but do not accept the input or the draft legislation provided by many of the companies, because that's exactly what's happening now, is the tech companies are saying, here you go, lawmaker, here's how the law really, we understand the technology, we built it, we know what it's about, this is what the law needs to say. And they pass those laws, and they are privacy laws in name only.
Yeah. In doing research, I saw that the Privacy Commissioner of Canada did a sweep of more than 1,000 websites and mobile apps and found that 97% of websites and the apps that were reviewed were using one or more deceptive design patterns that make it difficult for people to protect their privacy online. And that includes children's apps. And that's really appalling, Sharon.
It is, but it's not new. Mm-hmm. This has been going on from day one, and it has been allowed to proliferate. And this sounds really cynical, perhaps, but it's a fact of corporate life. And this is not to slam capitalism, because it's not capitalism that's a problem. It's a choice. It's a business decision that's been made by people in the organizations. They choose to do this because it helps to make the profits. And from the government side, they're complicit, because for every new innovation, for every new app, technology, there's something put out on the internet, there's marketing, there's employment, there's travel, there's computers, there's all sorts of goods that are purchased to create these things. That helps the economy, and it provides taxation. Governments want this to happen. They're loath to put any limits on it.
Sure. Okay, we've identified the problem. So what can viewers do to help bring about change and to protect themselves from companies invading their privacy?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that there's been precious little valid, real education about any of this, certainly in Canada. And I'm talking about into the university level as well. So the parents and the teachers know as little about most of this as the lawmakers and the bureaucrats who are saying, yes, this is a great idea. They have to educate themselves. People spend countless hours on the internet, doom scrolling, looking at cats and dogs, and the information is out there to educate yourself as to what is a legitimate source for information and learn the laws. Someone told me long ago, leave everything between the commas out. It's English, it's basic English, but it's complex sentence structure. So leave out what's between the commas, and it makes a whole lot more sense. It's easier to read. There's summaries of laws too. Understand what your rights and your responsibilities are. Talk to you. An important part is talk to not only the people who are now in elected office, talk to the constituency associations between elections and say, I want to know what the candidate that you support, and talk to the candidate. I want to know what your views are, not your parties. I want to know what your views are about this issue and that issue, and what will you do about this and that. That will reveal whether they know what they're talking about, because you've already educated yourself and you know more about it than they do by that point, and make it an election issue. If you don't do this, I'm not going to vote for you. If you do that, I will vote for you. They want the votes.
We're out of time here, but we always appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise with us. Sharon, thanks so much for being here.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Sharon Polsky is the president of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada.
You know, apparently it's not uncommon for people to walk over 160,000 kilometers in their lifetime. That's a whole lot of walking, a whole lot of adventures, and sometimes a lot of discomfort if you're someone who has some foot problems. We're going to dive in and talk about some of the foot problems and solutions today with Emily Soper. She's a certified pedorthist with a degree in kinesiology. She's also the owner of Nexus Orthotics in Medicine Hat, Alberta. Emily, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So what are some of the more common type of foot problems that people are experiencing right now?
Yeah, some of the most common ones that I see here in the office are probably bunions, hammer toes, plantar fasciitis, Morton's neuroma, to name a few. But yeah, it's pretty common that those four pop up weekly.
You know, as a matter of fact, I experienced a little bit of the hammer toe situation myself because I grew so fast, my feet grew so big when I was a kid. My parents couldn't keep up with the new shoes, and the toes don't exactly sit flat. They're a little bit curled here. So you see a lot more of that with kids today?
Yeah, I do see a lot with that. I mean, it's hard for parents to keep up with how fast the kids grow, and kids sometimes don't always tell you. And it's hard to buy a shoe beginning of the year and then have to replace it again in December. So, especially with today's costs, I do see it more often than not. But again, there's a hereditary factor in some cases where the second toe is longer, and then in that case, over time, it definitely claws back out of the way.
What advice would you give to parents? Maybe buy more sandals for the kids?
Yeah, no, not so much. It depends on the kid too, but you always want to make sure that you're getting a thumb space from the end of their longest toe to the end of the shoe when buying shoes at the store, for sure.
What are some of the causes, Emily, of a lot of the foot issues we're seeing today, and are they even preventable?
Yeah, a lot of the causes I would say are probably shoes. That's probably the number one. A lot of the shoes that we buy are not the greatest, and people actually don't really know what to buy for what specific activities they're doing, as well as it can be even job related, like working on concrete all day can wear and tear on the body, and even dress shoes for sure if you have to dress up more for work as well.
So I guess walking on the concrete all day is not very helpful, I guess, for a lot of your foot and back issues?
I guess you could walk through Costco and ask some of those employees working there, and they probably are a little grumpy and tired from standing on concrete all day. Yeah, it is. Our bodies are not designed to walk on concrete, so it definitely plays a big factor in pain for sure.
So how much does the foot really impact our backs? So if we have foot problems, that relates to some of maybe the back issues that we have as well.
Yes, it definitely can. So a lot of times if you're not walking, your gait's a little bit off. Let's say you're wearing, like, have you ever seen those kids wear UGG boots and they're wearing them inward? That excess strain where the shoe and the foot is rotating in can definitely strain all the way up to the back over time. So it does play a big factor in back pain for sure.
How dangerous is it? I've seen a lot of times on social media, a lot of advertisements for footwear. you know, people like, hey, buy these shoes, you can buy, but you're not actually trying them on to see if it's a good, proper fit. People are just buying it online. How dangerous is that? So when you get them, you try them on, it's like, you know, they're not very comfortable at all.
Yeah, I mean, I even get advertisements on Facebook and Google all the time because obviously I'm looking at shoes on a regular basis. I've had some people who've had success. I've even bought shoes online before too, but generally I know the brand before I'm buying it, and I already know what size I am. So it's a risk. If they have a good return policy, maybe you could try it out. But a lot of the stuff online is geared towards let's get more cushion on your feet. You don't need cushion. Most of the time, we need more structured shoes on concrete, which is the opposite to what people think.
Really? So you need a lot more of that support? What about people that have flat feet? How can you really help them? The arch has really fallen.
Yeah, flat feet. I mean, it just generally depends if you've had like flat feet your whole life. Some people with flat feet their whole life generally sometimes don't have any pain, but there are some who definitely do. If you just think of it as a car, if you have low shock on your car or high, you generally feel those bumps along the way a little bit more.
How common is plantar fasciitis? Maybe you can explain to our viewers exactly what it is.
Yeah, so plantar fasciitis, it's pretty common. I'm sure you've heard somewhere, know someone who's had it. You've heard that dreaded plantar fasciitis kind of kicking around. So it just generally means plantar fascia, and then itis means inflammation in the foot. So it's just a pain in that plantar part of your foot. So it can be caused by all kinds of things. I would say the big one is a tight calf, actually. Your calf gets a little bit tight from sitting or standing on concrete without stretching. It can definitely impact your foot there for sure.
So what are some of the symptoms we should really look out for?
So some of the symptoms would be that first startup pain in the morning, those first few steps when you get out of bed. So let's say your heel or your arch is hurting when you wake up and you have to go to the bathroom, and then it eases off after those 10 steps. A nice stabbing pain in the heel is a good one, or in the inside of the heel as well. Also, sometimes people explain that it feels like you're taking a rubber band and stretching it across your arch during the day. So it can increase the more you walk on those first few steps for sure when you sit down, like after lunch or dinner, and get back up.
Can orthotic insoles actually help to treat plantar fasciitis? How do they work?
Yeah, so they definitely can help for sure. So what the orthotics are designed to do is they're designed to distribute plantar pressure throughout your foot so you don't have that high area of strain in the arch. So you add that orthotic in there and it takes some of that strain off every time you're walking. It's kind of like the major science behind it, but a lot of times I'm kind of adding like shoe changes or some exercises to do at home as well to kind of get to the real cause of what's causing this foot problem.
Are the orthotic insoles used maybe as a preventative measure as well?
Yeah, you can definitely use it as a preventative measure. Let's say you have severely high arches, and over time that high arch can lead to a lot of pressure in the ball of your foot and can cause hammer toes and Morton's neuroma and all kinds of issues up there, or maybe even plantar fasciitis. So it can kind of prevent those types of things, or even someone with a very flat foot can help prevent it from getting even more flat. Like especially diabetic patients, actually. If you're diabetic, you should look into more preventative maintenance for later on before you have any issues.
Can you explain what night splints are and how they actually work?
Yeah, night splints. Actually, I have one sitting back here, right beside that knee brace. I'll grab it. So it looks like this. It's basically just stretches your foot while you're sleeping. So if you have a hard time stretching as much as you need to during the day to get rid of plantar fasciitis, the night splint is a bulky option to kind of help. It's usually the last resort if we're really having a hard time getting that flexibility back in the calf.
So Emily, how about potentially just doing foot stretches and using ice packs, or maybe even seeing a reflexologist? Would that help?
Yeah, that's always a good option. We always say stretching first because I think that orthotics aren't the be all and end all the time. There's lots of things that you can do yourself before seeking help. There's lots of good Dr. Google things that will tell you that you can do some stretches at home. And stretches is never a bad thing, for sure.
It's funny, I'm doing some foot stretches right now as we speak, pointing the toes back and forth under the desk here that you can't see. So maybe that's a good thing as we're talking about it.
Exactly. You can do that just while sitting at your desk.
Emily, can you explain what Achilles tendonitis is and what treatments are readily available?
Yeah, so Achilles tendonitis, again, it's that itis word, inflammation in the Achilles tendon. So Achilles tendonitis. It's basically just an inflammation in the Achilles. So a lot of times, again, tight calf can cause that. But most of the time I see just if you're either rolling out or rolling in, so that abnormal kind of walking that you're doing can cause that excess strain and pull on the Achilles. It's a fun one to treat. It can be a little bit finicky. Sometimes it can take a while to get rid of it, but it is interesting once you do get it right that it kind of just smartens up and goes back to normal.
Now you talk about proper footwear and the structure of a shoe being inclusive in the proper footwear. What does that actually look like?
Yeah, so I wish I had a shoe for an example for you today, but so soft and squishy things, like generally if you can take the shoe and rotate it and squish it into a ball, I would say don't buy that for any long distance walking for sure. You want a strong heel counter, so meaning that the back of the heel is stiff. So when you have those ones where you can just slide in, that has zero control around the ankle. So again, it will allow your foot to rotate in or out depending on what you're doing. And then wide base of support. So I'm sure you've seen like high heels or like very narrow shoes on the base. That's just generally not supporting your foot at all, and your arch can kind of hang off the side and lead to more pressure in that area. And then as well, size. So size makes the biggest difference. So if you have too tight of shoes or you're wearing those pointed shoes, generally over time, your foot will just kind of go to that way. So you'll end up with bunions, hammer toes, claw toes, all that fun stuff. And a lot of people don't realize that if you squish your foot into something, it doesn't keep it small. It actually makes it bigger over time. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
What advice would you have for the ladies who like to wear a lot of the heels, maybe the 3, 4, even 5-inch heels, you know, over many, many years? What does that do to the foot and to the back?
Yeah, over time, actually, it does a lot of damage. So generally, a lot of women are more prone to bunions because of what we put on our feet. So that pointed toe or the excess pressure on the ball of the foot will just flatten it over time. So your foot will get wider, you'll get bunions, hammer toes. And then if you think about it, if you wear a high heel all day, that just shortens your Achilles. So a lot of women, when they're retiring from wearing high heels or they can't wear them anymore, lack that range of motion. And it's really hard to go back down to a runner. It takes a lot of work. And sometimes we still have to put a heel lift into the shoe because they're just too tight at that point.
Now, if people do actually want to go running or jogging, what should they look for in a good running shoe?
There's so many different shoes on the market. I guess it really depends kind of what kind of heel striker or midfoot or forefoot striker you want to be. So if you strike in the heel, obviously that puts a little bit more pressure onto the knee. So if you're someone who struggles with knee pain, I would suggest going with a lower drop heel to do more of a midfoot strike. Again, you're just it's preference for people who are running. So there's lots of really cushion ones where it promotes more of a heel strike and then, more midfoot striker. So I guess it's preference because there's a lot of different options for running that you can do.
Emily, let's talk a bit about compression stockings. What are they and what are their true benefits?
Now, compression stockings are actually fairly beneficial for the majority of the population. If you have no issue getting blood flow down, I would say you could probably get away with wearing them daily. Over time, the body just has a hard time getting the blood back up to your heart. The blood doesn't get up just magically. It actually gets up by the calf contracting. So if you have a sitting job or you're standing for long periods of time, there's potential that the blood just pools over time. So if you think about your veins, they are like a backflow valve. Every time your calf contracts, the veins open and then they close. So when you have excess pressure down and then the next level pressure, they get leaky. And that's how you can kind of develop with varicose veins, just some swelling, like edema, that kind of stuff over time. So they are beneficial for the majority of the public, especially women who tend to have a little bit more strain from pregnancies and issues like that. But definitely flying for sure. I would recommend flying with compression socks for pretty much everybody.
So apart from compression stockings, does it make a difference what type of socks a person may wear?
Not necessarily. I guess we do sweat a lot more with our hands and our feet, but it's, again, generally on preference. Natural fibers generally work a lot better for sweat. So if you're wearing something that's a little bit more natural, like merino wool or cotton, it generally is a little bit less sweaty. But again, that's a preference thing. If you're suffering from like athlete's foot or something like that, it's definitely, you want to keep it dry is kind of the process on that one.
I believe you also use ankle and wrist braces at your clinic. What are those used for specifically?
Yeah, so it just depends kind of what type of injuries that someone's coming in with. Like I do a lot of wrist bracing for carpal tunnel at night. So a lot of carpal tunnel bracing, ankle braces, a lot of athletes for reoccurring ankle sprains. So it just generally depends kind of what's walking through those doors or hobbling, I guess, in some cases, but yeah.
So any final advice on the best care for our feet? I'm thinking maybe at the end of the day, give yourself a nice foot massage to get the blood flowing properly, because we have a lot of nerve endings at the end of our feet, correct?
We do, yeah. And that's why I find reflexology is a good practice as well. Like, and you know, maybe you can convince that special someone at home to give you a foot massage if they will, if they will. But yeah, rolling a ball under your foot at the end of the day can definitely help loosen all of that walking that you've done. Because your feet are important, and it's unfortunate when they do start to hurt. You don't realize how annoying it is when they do.
Absolutely. Emily Soper is a certified podorthist and owner of Nexus Orthotics. Thanks so much for joining us today from Medicine Hat, Alberta.
Thank you so much for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.